Hey guys, Bitcoin sitting at $121,000. Money is flowing into Ethereum. Money is about to flow into altcoins. I want to go over what to expect for the rest of this bull market. So far, things have played out so great, and I'm so happy with how everything is going right now. I hope you're happy as well. This market, it has been a patience tester, but it is paying off. It is paying off. So welcome to the FOMO factory. Well, former FOMO factory. It's now blockchain decoded. Platform is coming really soon where you can find all the information about Bitcoin, about altcoins, when to buy, what to buy. So that will definitely be coming. And I think you're gonna love it. In the meantime, welcome, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me go over the roadmap that I think that this whole crypto market is gonna take. Doesn't have to be a long video in this case, but just the usual money flow. Is that still going to play out? Where the money goes from Bitcoin into ETH, into high caps, into low caps. Let's take a look. So at this moment, Bitcoin 121K. Again, this was a pretty sick ass candle. If you look at the 4-hour candle for Bitcoin was up 0.5%. Sorry, 2%. On the 4-hour for such a high cap asset, that's insane. Right now, also, if you look, this is what Bitcoin does, right? It goes up, goes into price discovery, and then it dies off for a short period of time, where it makes a high, a low, a low, a high, a low, etc., and then it goes up again. Now we kind of saw the same thing, followed by such a god candle, but it came pretty fast, actually. It was a little bit above my expectation. I don't mind, however. I definitely don't mind. So BTC is still doing well. What I think is, and what we have said before, is that Bitcoin is the asset that all the money goes into, like always. And what's the reason, right? Well, we now have ETFs and the institutions and whatever the reason may be. Then again, the narrative is different, but what's happening is the same, right? It's the same as every other bull market. Bitcoin just adopts the money, it adapts, it takes up all the liquidity. Bitcoin goes up. At a certain point, there's a lot of money right there. People take it out, they put it somewhere else, and then that goes up. But what we said is that this time, I do think that if we get an alt season, it will be the smallest one ever. Of course, I don't want to show you why I say of course, but in terms of actual cash and alts against the dollar, it could be huge. Right now, I'm gonna talk about why I think that that's gonna happen. And these lights, it's a bit of a bummer. But hey, I'm Dutch. I also complain about the summer. It's just what it is, man. But that's what Bitcoin does, right? Now, what we see is that Ethereum is catching steam against Bitcoin for a while, right? And this has been at a macro low level in April. And now ETH is already up 2x against BTC. The cool thing is, though, why is Ethereum running so hard on the dollar pair? And why is everybody talking about it right now? Well, everybody's talking about it because it is going up against the dollar, of course. And that's, like the best marketing are green candles. That's what it is, right? But if you look at this, it's going up against BTC, but BTC is also going up, right? That means that Ethereum on the dollar pair is, of course, doing fantastic. And this is what you see right here. It was in this, big, it had a little trouble breaking above resistance, right? It had the bull market 2021 top. We tried again in March 2024, didn't even really get there. Again in May, tried in December last year when we had that decent run, right? Rejection, tried again, rejection, and now we finally broke above it. So I would say that, it would be kind of not weird if ETH at a certain point at least retest like $3,900. That's typically what you see when it tries to break, and it breaks out, that it does a retest, and then goes up even further. You'll probably notice that the sentiment will be very bad if this happens, because we are in crypto and 5% corrections are FUD, and that's not allowed, and that's scary. But in this case, that will be, pretty okay. What I think is going to happen in this case with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and altcoins. I'm going to explain what I think. Mostly about alts, because that's what we're all waiting for, right? We know that Ethereum is now doing well, but who gives a shit about Ethereum, right? Ethereum was a nice buy over here, and even over here. But now it's like, man, it's now up 3x from the April lows. I don't know if you remember, but I said back then, like, this is by far the most brain dead buy, right? It has great upside, and the downside, I mean, it's ETH, right? So it won't wreck you at that point for 90%. And it's now up 3x. Now, I think there's more in the tank for Ethereum, but does that mean that now it's a good time to buy ETH, right? It depends a little bit. Is it a good time to buy ETH compared to Bitcoin? Right? Then this is a chart that you might want to look at, right? Am I buying ETH or BTC? Well, if ETH on its Bitcoin pair is low, then of course you want to buy ETH. If it's sitting high against Bitcoin, then you want to buy Bitcoin, right? Now it is sitting at a level that I think, like, yeah, it can and probably will go higher, but it's now it's kind of in no man's land, right? This is the time, this is the chart where you look at and be like, okay, no trade is the best trade, in my opinion, right? Great trade, great trade, great trade. But in the middle, yeah, you kind of do nothing, right? You took your position, and in the middle you wait. You have some cash, you have some ETH, you have some Bitcoin, whatever, and you just wait for it to see where it plays out, right? That's what you want to do, in my opinion. And every direction that it takes should be a good one, right? You should never be like all into ETH, all into Bitcoin, all into alts, all into cash, all into whatever, right? So now it's a little in the middle. Now, if you look at ETH against alts, right? What should you buy? Well, alts against ETH. Then this is how it looks like. And so what I see on this chart is that altcoins were outperforming Ethereum really hard, like this whole cycle, basically, right? And that doesn't mean that altcoins did well. We all know that altcoins like were not like fantastic, but ETH sucked more. So in that case, alts still outperformed ETH. Now alts underperform against ETH. Right? It's very normal. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down. At a certain point, we will bounce. And this is where it gets kind of juicy, in my opinion. Let's take a look at this. The Bitcoin dominance. The Bitcoin dominance is showing real weakness right now. Why does this matter? It matters because you don't want to only be in Bitcoin, right? At least some people, they will. But these are the people that have like multi-years of time horizon, that have a lot of money, right? But if you are a normal person like me, I never thought I would say that, but then you want to make a little bit more out of it, right? And then the trick, in my experience, to 50x your money, right, is not to look for coins that can give you a 50x. Because although you might eventually will catch one or two, you have also caught a lot that didn't do that, and now you need a 200x or 500x to compensate for that to eventually sit at that 50x anyway, right? So that's not really the strategy. The strategy is to know when to be in what. And that's exactly why we build blockchain decoded, right? You'll know exactly when to be in this asset, when to be in that asset, right? Because 50xing your money in one bull market, to be honest, I'm like, it's not like as hard as it may seem. right? But the only thing that's standing in the way of everybody always is their emotion, right? And if we know what charts to look at, then it's a lot easier. So if you look at the Bitcoin dominance right now, yeah, it is really weak at the moment. It got rejected off of this trend line with a fat rejection as well. It's below the bull market support band right now, quite below the bull market support band. And it is below the 50 weekly moving average. And it's not even below the 50 weekly moving average. We had a close right there as well, right? The first close that we had since December last year. And December last year was a pretty good period for alts to outperform. Now, however, it is more the time for ETH to outperform. Because if you overlay others again on their Ethereum pair, what you see is that in this period, others on their ETH pair, they were going up while the Bitcoin dominance was going down, right? So what that means basically is that this moment where the Bitcoin dominance dropped and something else outperformed, that something else was alts, right? Now that the Bitcoin dominance is dropping, what is outperforming is Ethereum, right? This was a nice bounce. That's fine. This is a part of the market cycle of how the money flows, right? Again, I'm happy that things are playing out like I don't want to say like expected, but it is kind of expected, right? But it just takes a long time. So I will talk about what I think is gonna happen right now, but I must say, be careful to who you listen to, and study not necessarily the 4 year cycle, right? It could be 4.5 years this time, whatever, I don't know. But the general money flow in crypto. We are all focusing on rate cuts and on the stopping of QT and this and that. And definitely that has an impact. But don't underestimate the human psychology, right? People make money in Bitcoin and they put it into something different, right? Into something higher risk, but still and that's ETH, right? And then they take a step down on the risk ladder again, or up, whatever, and you go into alts. Money flows like that. Has always been the case. That's the case in TradFi. That's the case in crypto even more. That's just what it is, right? And we now see, again, a little confirmation of that. So the BTC dominance drops, right? And in the meantime, some alts are still, doing well. Like we have alts like Aerodrome, that's running really hard. And I remember that there were certain big YouTubers out there that said almost a year ago, well, yeah, no, Bitcoin is gonna top early and Aerodrome is not gonna go maybe $1 and that's it. I get that you want to be conservative and cautious in crypto, which is good, but you just don't want to be bearish in a bull market, right? If you find the right balance between that, then that's fine, right? Because a lot of things have proven a lot of big accounts wrong already right now, and the party has not even started yet. And I'm not gonna scream off the rooftop for the rest of this bull market up only, because at a certain point, damn, I will sell, get out, right? But the party hasn't started yet, and I will show you why. So again, Bitcoin dominance drops, right? Looks fantastic. I love to see how it's getting rejected right here. I don't know why this line decides to just move on its own like this, but whatever. Bitcoin dominance is dropping right now, really weak, below the 50 moving average, sitting at some support right here. But then again, I feel like, okay, if this breaks, then we have a long way to go down. Because if you look this, it's kind of sitting at the 236 level. If we lose that, then we're going to the well-known 382, right? And the 382 is coming in at around 50, let's say 56%, right? That's a long way from here, right? Now, then it depends where is the money gonna flow? And that's why it's getting pretty nice, in my opinion, because you can see that the dominance dropped, you know, a bit, right? It had a pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. It has a good drop, definitely. But is this an alt season, right? This is like this or this, right? But it's not an alt season yet. I expect the dominance personally to go to 42% or so. Why? That's the range, right? It's very simple. That's the range, right? So it's not much yet. But while that happened, we see that ETH is ripping already, right? ETH again, it 3x'd. The highest cap altcoin 3x'd, right? Now, why is that? That's because Bitcoin, again, is simply sitting at high levels. So therefore I said, like, hey, it's not going to be the biggest alt season by any means. Why not? Because an alt season is simply where alts outperform Bitcoin, right? Where the Bitcoin dominance, for example, drops. Well, here we almost had no alts, right? So of course it kind of dropped from 100% to 35, 63% drop. We're not going to see that again, right? Here it dropped from 73% to 38, right? 47% drop. Well, I don't expect it to drop as hard because one, we are not coming from that high, right? I don't see it go there, actually. But I also think we are gonna like bottom a little bit higher again as well, right? So the alt season will be less big, in my opinion. But the difference is that if you look at BTC, the last time we had an alt season was here, right? This point right here, where Bitcoin went from 30K to 60, basically 70, right? That was alt season during Bitcoin sitting at an average of 50K, give or take, right? If we now get it, Bitcoin sits at 120, maybe 100, maybe 150, right? But higher than last cycle. So there's way more liquidity to flow into alt, so the dominance doesn't need to drop that much. I said that months ago, and we see it right now already by how ETH is responding, right? With this small drop, ETH sitting above 4K. Cool, let it drop even further. But then it's flowing into alts. And that's why it's getting nice. So this breakdown by the Bitcoin dominance makes ETH break out right here. The breakout by Ethereum makes it alts are going down against ETH right now, right? That's what we see. Eventually, this chart is going to turn around. It's going to happen here, or here, or here, or here. We'll see, right? I think it might have a decent bounce right here. But I also think that eventually alts can go lower against Ethereum with maybe another 10 up to 20-ish% or so. That could happen like we're seeing right now. That could continue to happen on an Ethereum run, right? So where now ETH is getting more fuel in the tank, just like Bitcoin did. And then that money flows from ETH to alts, right? We saw the fuel in the tank for BTC. We see what happens when a little of that fuel transfers to ETH. ETH 3x's. Now there's fuel in the tank for ETH. And now we'll wait for this chart to turn around where that money can flow into alts. That's where it's going to get completely nuts, in my opinion. Because the liquidity in alts is, of course, a lot lower than what it's for Ethereum, right? So where Ethereum does like an easy 3x, like it did a 3x, like bam, like that, right? While the Bitcoin dominance is like, right? So then I think like, okay, if that liquidity then flows into altcoins, isn't like, I remember a couple months ago when people said like, well, maybe a 5x in the cycle. Bruh, we are now sitting there like 3x, 5x, depends on the coin, right? And we haven't started at all. And what do I mean by that? Well, again, I'm going to show you a chart that shows you how far we are, in my opinion. But if you overlay the altcoin market on the dollar pair, right? You can see that the altcoin market is going up while altcoins on the ETH pair are going down. And it's kind of as the last cycle as well. They were going down against Ethereum, but up on the dollar, just because ETH on the dollar did well. And then when altcoins turned around and started to outperform an Ethereum that was doing really well, that was when altcoins broke their all-time high and just really went parabolic, right? Just very, very, very parabolic. They did fantastic, right? So I think we are waiting for that turnaround right now, right? Where we do this, where we go down, where we bottom, might be here, turn around. And now it was Bitcoin season. Now it's ETH season. And after that, you get alt season, right? So is it alt season yet? No, definitely not, right? But it is so fucking obvious right now, right? Everything is playing out. Everything. Bitcoin, ETH, high caps. And now he's still going to say like, well, no alt. Shut up. Come on. You see it happening, right? So now we are waiting for the last part. When could that happen? I don't know. So have a nice day. No, I don't know. Look, I mean, here it took like around 90 days, you know, for it to turn around. It was a pretty fast and sharp fall. So far, it is taking. It depends a little bit where you take it from, right? But so far, it is taking about 90 days, right? So could it be that we get this drop? The rest of this drop like pretty fast and the turnaround as well. Yeah, sure. It could be that we get a rate cut in September and the market is already there, right? The market is already, the money is there. The shifting is already happening, right? And that could be that final push maybe, right? That gives people the narrative for this to play out like it's going to play out anyway. Could be the case. So I wouldn't be surprised to see an alt season start around September maybe. Now, why did I say that, you know, we haven't started? Well, that's very simply because of the alt season chart itself. If you look at that chart, then you can see the total 3 ES, right, excluding stables on their Bitcoin pair, right? Looks like this right here. So we had our Bitcoin season, we had our ETH season, and alt season not yet, right? We are now here, around the lows, right? While you have altcoins on the dollar pair doing fantastic, right? An aerodrome is doing fantastic. If you look at the super, for example, it's doing fantastic. There are a lot of coins. If you look at a Wilder World, it's doing fantastic. And AIOZ, it completely like exploded as well. Clearpool was one of the coins that was really performing well, right? We say like, well, when our altcoins are gonna do well, like they are, right? They are. A lot of coins are up like that much from their cycle lows. If you look at the altcoin market on the dollar pair, it is sitting quite close to an all-time high, right? They are doing well, but they are not outperforming Bitcoin yet, right? And yeah, that's on my bingo card to happen pretty soon, actually. And when we see that happen, that's when we finally see the crazy explosion and the FOMO, because people don't really feel a lot of FOMO for Bitcoin. People were waiting for alts, right? They don't feel a lot of FOMO for ETH. ETH was always like, yeah, it exists, right? Who cares? People feel FOMO for altcoins. That's just what it is. The money is already there. The money is flowing there. So now it's just a matter of positioning yourself, right? And can we get pullbacks in the meantime? Sure, of course. I don't know. Could happen today, tomorrow, next week. I don't know. Maybe not. Like, that happens, right? But whenever this chart goes up, then it is really time for us to fly. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. And then it's a matter of, like, you know, high caps versus low caps. Well, then we have a chart like this. This is the low caps of the top 125 against the high caps of the top 125. Yeah, and this shows to me, like, hey, ranging, right? It's now sitting here, very low, right? This, I don't know if this will go up anytime soon, right? We're now in the Ethereum phase, then comes the high cap phase, and then comes the low cap phase. You might say, like, well, it has to happen fast, right? Because, hey, 4-year cycle, we only have 4 months left. Every alt season so far lasted 4 months, right? So this one could be 2 months, 3 months, doesn't matter, something like that. But it could also be that this one lasts 5 months, right? Alt season can continue when the bull market is already over. One example of that is this right here in 2018, I think. If you look at BTC, right, you see that BTC topped out right here, December 2017, right? And alt season, right, it topped out right here a month later, but still this wasn't like that, like lower, but it was in April, and then it really died off, right? And here as well, this was the first stop, and that's kind of where alt season still had like a month or so, right? But it could also be that this cycle takes a little longer than usual, right? My base case is still 4-year cycle, so top in November, December, January, something like that. But I'm open to the idea that it could last a little longer, and that it goes into Q1 or 2 of 2025. It's possible. It is possible. I don't know. And to be honest, I don't really care. I've set my goals. And once I reach them, I get out for 80%, and I will see, I will ride the rest of the 20% to see what happens, right? But so far, again, the money is flowing, the Bitcoin dominance is going down nicely. And again, another chart as well that shows you that we are like barely started is this chart. It's the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and stable dominance, right? So the dominance for everything except alts. If this goes down, it's alt season, right? Where are we? At the top of the range, right? So, you know, say whatever you want, but can we go here again? Yeah, man, whatever, maybe. But look at the downside versus the upside potential when it comes to the range, right? That's showing me like, wow, we have a long way to go, right? Bitcoin dominance was going up. Dominance is saying something about, like, is it dominating? Is it that season, right? We had Bitcoin season. Cool, we got that. Ethereum. We are now in Ethereum season, right? This is like, here people maybe could have said like, oh, that cat bounce. But here you should have said like, okay, you know, here we go. And bam, like obviously this is an Ethereum season. And then we can look at the others dominance, altcoin dominance, right? And then once that goes up, we can say that it's alt season, right? We are still low right there. So again, that gives me a lot of comfort and faith, right? If we were sitting at these prices right now of alts, individual alts, and the dominance was already sitting here, I was like, okay, this is what we get, I guess, right? But again, we're sitting at a lot of alts are still cheap, right? Depends on which alt. Ronin sucks, right? CeFi sucks. Dogecoin does well. ADA does well, right? Joe sucks, right? It depends. But we are, for alts overall, sitting at a healthy level / opportunity. While if you look at the overall altcoin dominance, yeah, it's not far from the cycle lows, percentage-wise and time-wise. And so now I feel like, man, let this go up. Like that will be insane. Right? And if the crypto market goes up even up in total, or Bitcoin, when this happens, then it's nuts. Then anything below 10x for your altcoins is just not even realistic anymore. But it could be that Bitcoin or crypto in total takes a good correction. But even if it takes a good correction, it doesn't matter. If this dominance just doubles from this point, right? That's sick. That's really sick. So stay tuned for the rest of this market. I would say look at these kind of charts to measure for yourself, like how far are we? Forget about the time. Forget about the prices, right? You could look at a price and be like Dogecoin, like, yeah, we're sitting at 23 cents. The high was 80 or whatever. Like, how far do we? I don't know, because you don't know what the top is. So how do you know what to compare it with, right? Same for Cardano. If you look at that, all-time high was like $3. Right? So we maybe get a 4x. I don't know. For all you know, it goes to $12 a cycle, right? And like, you don't know how this is relative. Well, by looking at dominance, you know how it is, relatively speaking, right? Because the dominance actually shows you how it does compared to the rest of the market. And we know how the rest of the market looks like. Right? So for Cardano, going back to the range high is a 5x from this point. Right? That's obvious. Yeah. The thing is that we now have more money in the market than what we had over here or here. Right? Let alone by the time we are there. So that shows me like, hey, don't underestimate this market. How long do you want this thing to show you like, hey, look, it's playing out again, right? Believe in the bull market. And by the end of the year, beginning next year, you made some good gains. Pack your bags, grab your shit, get out, and like try do it again next cycle. But for now, it's far from over. Didn't even start. Last chart, total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin. This is the chart that Benjamin Cohen looks at, right? I don't look. I know a lot of people. They think that this chart will go down here because Benjamin says so, right? It should go down here. At least that's how he says it. But I just don't see it happen. If we had no signs of the money flow, if we were not in the seasonality, if there was no adoption, if there were no narratives, if there was like no strength of ETH or whatever, then I would be like, yeah, okay. But I just don't see why it should go down there at 0.25, right? If anything, we already went there. Right, but because if you look at the same chart without stable coins, we went to 0.26. Yeah, I'm not gonna say like, nah, it went here, but it should go here. So I'm not buying it because of this difference. Stop trying to time bottoms, time tops. Look at like, where are we? Give or take. Is it more of a buy zone, more of a sell zone, and act based on that. And if I look at this chart, then I'm like, yeah, wherever the bottom is or the top is, this is obviously closer to a bottom than the top. So buy time, right? That's it for today. Otherwise, it takes too long again. Thanks for watching, guys. Like the video if you like the video. Stay safe. Don't be emotional. And otherwise, I only want to see tears of joy soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.